Welcome to Jacked Theology. My name is Dr. Matt Murphy. I'm with my good friend, Dr. Kevin Young. Welcome.
Good to see you again, man.
Actually, I had a member at our church is like, "Hey, when's your next episode coming out?" I said, "Oh, all right."
Yeah, no, I've been missing it. We gotta do these more regularly, which it's not Matt's fault. It's actually my fault. My life is sheer and utter chaos. Nobody cares though, so we're glad that you're back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Yeah, we're now in Christmas season. How's all your Christmas stuff going?
Christmas stuff has not started at all in our home. We just moved into a new house, which is in the middle of a flip. But we had to get out of, we were staying with our in-laws and we had to get out of that. So we moved into the new place in the middle of a construction zone, and there's all of the Christmas stuff is out in a pod in boxes. So I'm hoping this weekend we can unload that and buy a Christmas tree and at least celebrate a little bit of the merriness of the season. How about you?
Yeah, it's slowly but surely. We don't have a tree up yet, but we have started to put out some of our decorations.
Are you supposed to put the tree up before Christmas? Is that allowed during Advent?
Well, if you want to be technically accurate, then no, you should put your Christmas tree up on Christmas Eve. But hey, we're in America, so
that's right. You got to find a middle road, right, between law and love, yeah. Between justice and grace.
But we're in the heart. My kids swim, and we're in the heart of swim season. And every weekend there's a meet right now, so it is busy weekends to try to do that. So, yeah, we need a tree soon as well. But we wanted to talk today about a couple things. We could talk about Christmas a little bit. I noticed a couple things have been happening in kind of Christendom that we wanted to address. One would be the Doug Wilson kind of sexual abuse cover up, if you will. Seems like there's one of those a year. Doug Wilson seems he's in the crosshairs now, and then also too, I saw last night a trailer for a new movie about Christian nationalism.
Rob Reiner, yeah.
Yeah, thought we could talk about that a little bit too. So yeah, Doug Wilson.
Yeah, I don't know if you all know who Doug Wilson is. I feel like I'm late to the game on Doug Wilson and who he is, that it's been like this grassroots thing out in Idaho in a place called Moscow. And he pastors this place called Christ Church. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, he kind of first came on people's radar for his thinking and the way he has, as a pastor, framed things about slavery, and seemingly, came across as being kind of pro-slavery and very kind of white-centered. And then it kind of seemed as though he was dipping his toes into Christian nationalism and kind of came this poster child pastoral leader for Christian nationalism, which is probably tied in a lot of ways to this idea of a white-centric nation. And now there is a lot of conversation about sexual abuse and aiding and abetting, sexual predators and abuse and cover-ups and things like that. And I always feel like I'm 2 or 3 steps behind on Doug Wilson in this conversation, but every time I hear about it, it just gets worse. And I get more concerned because there are a lot of people who have a great affinity for the things that he is saying and the things that he is doing. And so it almost feels like a movement, and I would call it a sect of Christianity. I have a real difficulty thinking of him and those who support him as being mainstream, but a lot of folks believe that this is the gospel and this is the way. And, it's hard to look the other way when it's racism or when it's Christian nationalism. But then when we start getting into these conversations about sexual abuse in the church, you're right. It feels as though, Catholic Church had their day, Southern Baptist Church had their day. Now Doug Wilson and these, kind of Christian nationalist folks are having their day in their spotlight of sexual abuse. And I feel as though the response to it is getting worse and worse every time the church has one. I was disappointed in the SBC's response to the sexual abuse crisis in general, and I'm aghast at the response to what we're seeing in Doug Wilson and come out of Christchurch in Moscow.
Yeah, I like to think of Doug Wilson as like John Piper, maybe on steroids or something. Very
Like,
fundamentalist.
like on doctrinal steroids, not on.
Yeah,
Have
yeah,
you ever seen Doug Wilson? I don't think anybody would accuse him of being
yeah.
jacked. Maybe having jacked theology, but not so much having a jacked physique.
Yeah, no,
Sorry,
yeah,
Doug. I try to never point out the physicality of people, but it is part of the stick here that we have, right? So let's just go there.
yeah, yeah. Maybe he took steroids and just forgot to work out while on them. And
They say it does fry your brain.
yeah, so yeah, he very male patriarchy. That's where I first heard of him because I followed Rachel Held Evans back when she was still with us, and when Twitter was at its I think best back in 2014 to 2018 around there. And she would go after those guys, Piper and Wilson, for their male patriarchy, and he kind of he's very flamboyant, very out there, pushes the envelope. I think
It's like
definitely kind of
a
Donald
showman.
Trump. Yeah,
Yeah.
Donald Trump. Like he actually told her, I'll read it here. Like he said, an unsubmissive woman deserves to be raped. Um, and she was calling him out for that. I mean, he that was a kind of a pushback to her, and so he has this kind of persona about him that he takes things very much to the extreme, and so that's the Doug Wilson I know, but he's part of kind of the mainstream evangelical fundamentalism. Crossway is one of his publishers, which is a popular publishing company in evangelical fundamentalist, neo-reformed, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. So
Um,
I'm wrong there. I guess I'm sorry to hear that he is far more mainstream than I
but he's
have
the
given him
kind of the
credit for.
extreme. Yeah, he's an extreme version of that. But yeah, yeah. If you go on his website, I think now he has to self-publish. I do not think Crossway still publishes them, but they did for a while. Yeah, and so he's getting accused of covering up sexual abuse in his church. The best I can tell, um, a young lady or a young married woman comes and finally has enough of getting beaten at home, really, or what have you. There's a few different situations, but it seems a common theme is a young lady's had enough. Trust her elders, trust the leaders of the church enough to like come forward and say, my husband is doing these things. Can you help me? Kind of a desperate plea. Like, and I've been in these environments. I think we've all been in these environments where to lose face, it's easy to try to save face because likely in this environment, the male husband that this woman's accusing of these things probably wants to climb the ladder, if you will, in the church. And so to accuse him of these things is almost to put that at risk. Maybe even their livelihood if they're on staff. I don't know that, but it takes a lot for a woman in those cultures to step forward. And so these women had to have been at their wits' end to even begin to think about doing this, much less do it. And so they obviously felt a trust in the organization to come forward. And basically, these women were just told to submit and deal with it and pray for your husband, those kind of things. We're encouraged not to like involve authorities. Let's handle this in house. And yeah, probably to go so far as to say some of these situations, women were blamed. It's your fault. If you were a better wife, this wouldn't have happened. And essentially the men kind of get a slap on the wrist,
Yeah.
go to this accountability group or meet with this pastor for a while. And then that's really all that was happened. And so now, that women are getting out of these environments. It's great. All the movements in our society and culture, Me Too, have given power to women to stand up and come out and stand up for themselves, essentially, and um, bring charges against these leaders, which I think is, I mean, we see it a lot. Like Rachel Dallenberger, Dallin, the gymnast who confronted Larry Nassar for all the
Right.
sexual abuse. She's a
Yeah.
big voice in this area, especially in church abuse. She actually experienced church abuse as well, and so she helps women stand up for their rights and themselves. I'm not sure she's involved in this one, but I know voices like that have given
Right.
power to women, which is great.
So
So
here's my question, though, Matt, and seems to be kind of the flashpoint for so many of these conversations is a difference in understanding of where the Bible falls on these things. Because clearly, I think that a lot of things that the world and maybe more progressive areas of the church would consider abuse, even bordering on sexual abuse, more conservative towards highly fundamentalist understanding of scripture would say, no, these things are not abuse and are not sexual abuse. This is condoned by scripture. This idea of a man, being in leadership over a woman, even to go so far as women are property, to men. I think in a more or extreme fundamentalist understanding of scripture. So how do we navigate through these questions of what is abuse, what isn't abuse, what is sexual abuse, what isn't sexual abuse, when we can't even agree in a lot of ways on what scripture condones and encourages and what it doesn't.
yeah, I mean, I think especially in a married relationship, there should be open communication about sexual activity. Um, I think in these cultures, these evangelical cultures, it's definitely preached from the pulpit that the woman should do whatever the man wants. And it's not well, some preachers might explicitly say that in the bedroom as well, but like, the male is the authority. So it's very natural, even if the preacher's not saying the man's the authority in the bedroom, that can actually lead there, and you're going to do what I want. But I think in any relationship that doesn't make sense, where one party just gets what they want every time, I think marriage is built around this idea of submitting to one another out of love for Christ and love for each other. So there's a mutual submission. It's not like just the woman submits. Actually, Paul tells us as men to submit actually even more. When you actually read the text about submission, it's Paul calling the men to actually submit so far that you're willing to die for your spouse. And so we've kind of missed that in the evangelical fundamentalist kind of realm. We focus on wives submit, but we missed the part about men submitting so far as to wanting to die for your spouse. So if your spouse is telling you, I don't want to do certain things or participate in certain things, I don't see how you could get around scripture where it says the man should submit to that and actually go all the way to death for that wish of their spouse. And to be honest with you, like, even in my own life in marriage bed, if my spouse doesn't want to do something, it's not going to be fun anyways. So what's the even point in like trying to force yourself?
Wait, fun? Marriage is supposed to be fun? I don't remember this being taught in Sunday school. What?
Yeah. So I
I'm supposed to enjoy marriage? I thought marriage was just an opportunity for me to get things from somebody else, to have all my needs fulfilled,
Yeah.
to find my other half.
Yeah.
I mean, I say all of that sarcastically, but
yeah.
I mean, there is that, mentality, though, I think, in a lot of churches, from the Bible, that really is the place of a woman in a marriage, is for her to fulfill the needs of a man, whether she likes it or not. And you're right. If there's not willingness or desire to do that, how can there be joy or love, from the man? It's essentially slavery. And I keep thinking, or resisting the urge to think of modern day patriarchy as being essentially slavery, but I think it's essentially what it is. These folks like Doug Wilson and his ilk, who are essentially calling for a return to ancient patriarchy and then using the Bible to leverage that, are essentially calling for slavery in marriage. I just
Yeah.
don't see any other way to see it. Correct me if I'm, is there any other way to see it in your mind?
No, I mean, I think that's the logical conclusion you can deduce from it is that the woman is the slave to the man, and whatever he says goes. And he's essentially said that. Doug Wilson.
Yeah. Well, and God set it up that way, right? That's the thinking.
Yeah. And a lot of those guys, and I mean, that it does tell into the whole Christian nationalism conversation as well. All those guys, they want to bring that back. And they don't.
They want to make the
They
nation
will,
their bedroom.
yeah, they will tell you flat out that women shouldn't have the right to vote. And since they do, they need to ask their man
How to
who they
vote,
should vote
right?
for. Which is
At first,
insane.
I thought these people. At first, I thought it was just a shtick. That these people are like that. Let's just go for engagement on social media. But no, they really. I don't know. Maybe it started as a let's throw this out there and rile people up, but now I think a lot of them truly believe that they believe what they're drinking. They buying the snake oil that they're selling. And there are a lot of people out there who I think want this to be true, who want to live this way, who feel as though they have been repressed or sidelined or ignored in areas of their life, in relationships, in their family situations, in their work environments, in their communities. And people, I think, who are highly repressed or suppressed end up utilizing religion or faith or God in order to justify an end to that, even if it's not biblical.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, but nothing's going to happen to Doug Wilson, right? And these leaders, like, unfortunately, they're so insulated, unless they physically did the abuse themselves, but they're so insulated in their cultures. Like, they're not going to get fired. Their boards aren't going to remove them. Um, it their boards likely agree with them and support them 100%. And so these cultures are so like ingrained in this, yeah, that women have no rights, that it's all about the man, and it's the woman's fault if something's going wrong in the marriage. And nothing's going to change that. And so I think if you're a woman in those environments, run. Run far, get out of there. Find there's lots more healthier communities to be involved with, especially as it relates to women. Obviously, when you're dealing with people, there's a lot of unhealthiness everywhere, but there are other communities of faith that you can be part of that empower women, that love women, see them as valuable to God's kingdom, and aren't calling you just to submit to the man. And these cultures too are funny because they only do things for the men. Like, it's like men's Bible study only, and some of these churches, like Mark Driscoll for the longest time, and I think he still probably does. It's like, it's all about training men. We don't care about the women. And so, yeah, I mean, it's all over their pages. Like, they're not trying to hide it. Like, we just care about men only. Women are there to birth kids, take care of them, and to, please us in whatever way we deem it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you, what do you do about it though? Where do you make positive momentum in this? Because it feels so often like what is happening is a little unstoppable. It's growing. There are a lot of people who are being drawn to this kind of thing, and there are a lot of women and families who are being hurt, who are being pulled into these things, and it's especially disappointing to me when I see women out here defending, this kind of theology. It feels, and this is gonna, maybe ruffle. It feels a little like brainwashing. It feels a little like, um, Stockholm syndrome, where you begin to identify with your captors and defend them for what they're doing. And I just kind of want to shake some people a little bit and say, this is not what Scripture teaches. You have to get outside of your bubble of thinking and hear some alternate expressions and explanations to these passages, because they're not evil. And they aren't just compelling, but they are more compelling to what you're hearing and what you're involved in. And it's dangerous, but weaker brothers and sisters spiritually oftentimes are drawn to this, especially in a Christian nationalist environment.
Yeah. Sorry about the church bells.
Yeah, they're very long today. It must be noon there where you are.
It's the 2 to 3 minute version. Yeah, I as you're talking, I was thinking, like, how do you? In reality, most of Christendom doesn't believe those things. In fact, if you could step out of that fundamentalist evangelical culture for a minute, you'll realize that's a minority thinking. Um, However, they've done a good job of co-opting their views and beliefs with political party, and so they have a lot of power through the political system. The Republicans, and all of that, and in a lot of evangelicals who aren't maybe necessarily agree with that extreme fundamentalism of male patriarchy, do agree with republicanism and identify to be Christian as to be Republican, and so they have a strong voice, they have strong leadership, they have the Speaker of the House now, who believes very similar things, which is kind of scary. And so they have this push and they have this momentum. And I think ways in which we can resist this movement is, the documentary that's coming out, to speak out against it, to educate people. I know folks have done a lot of work, Dumez's popular book, Jesus and John Wayne, I think did a lot for people. Actually, I think that one opened a lot of people's eyes to the downfalls of this system. And so I think more work like that, having conversations, bringing what's in the darkness to the light, exposing these guys for what they are. I think that's part of it. But but yeah, the women, a lot of them are brainwashed, or they're not brainwashed. They're just scared.
Scared and unable to get
Because
out. Yeah.
they have 4 or 5 kids who are young. They need the stable relationship. They need their husband's income. Their whole world is surrounded by people that think like this, especially people that have the influence. And so where do they go? Where do they turn? It's got to be so difficult to even begin to crawl out of that space. But I'm encouraged to see more and more people like I mentioned earlier, Rachel Dollenheimer. I need to find her name. But people like that speaking out and making it known, like, this isn't right. You don't have to live like this. I think will help more and more people step out of it. But then there's also probably some sort of sense of safety in it. Like, I remember when I was part of like this culture and environment, hopefully I was never that extreme, but I definitely was part of the complementarian crowd, and we preach wives submit to husbands and things like that. And, I I forget where I was going with that. I just lost my train of thought. Um, it, women, I forget. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no,
Maybe.
I think what you said about it being a very small segment of Christianity hit me because it doesn't feel small to me. But you're right. Whenever we truly take orthodoxy, at its base level, based on at least the creeds, or what is the gospel? The gospel is believing in what the death, the burial, the resurrection of Jesus, and the hope of redemption. You know, if we take that as being base level orthodoxy for Christianity, then Christianity is very it's huge, and I think that to see these ultra fundamentalist segments of Protestantism as being larger than they are is more on the basis of, as you said, the power and control that they have through influence, through obviously the government, through other channels, and so they exert an extraordinary amount of power and control in those other ways, and instill fear in other people. And that is usually the way these things go, even in other countries with other religions. Oftentimes, this happens as well. A small, very vocal group of fundamentalist ideological people end up exerting a great amount of control and holding a great amount of power because of fear of what they will do, and being willing to do anything in order to get that power. And here in the U.S., one of I think the best examples of this is no matter whether or not you voted for Trump, let's not for a moment, let's resist the urge for a moment to use Trump as being divisive, as a dividing line. Let's use him as a uniting line. I think that most people who probably voted for Trump at one point, or maybe even both points, or still support Trump, look the other way on a lot of things that are kind of inherently Christian that Trump does not have. An understanding of the gospel, an involvement regularly with church, or with Christian communities of people of faith and participation, a life that does not show the fruits of the Spirit of Galatians 5:22 and 23, an inability to in any way, shape, or form control the tongue, as James talks about. And so I said uniting, but I think what we would say is that a lot of folks who support Trump, or vote for Trump, do so not because of the fact that he is more Christian in who he is inherently, but because of his ability to unite a powerful block of Christian people who will accomplish things that are advantageous to Christians, court justices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that what you said is well taken, in that unfortunately much of Christianity isn't so much about, at least here in US America, us living out our faith in the public forum, but is about us kind of mandating boundaries that prevent other people from doing anything that offends Christian thinking.
Yeah. 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 I remember what I was going to say. The safety issue, and you brought it up with Trump, is there's a sense that being aggressive, male patriarchy, taking control, that there's safety in that. And so I think when I was teaching about this, that was one of the pluses to it, is that women naturally want safety. They want to feel safe. And so a man taking control can be attractive to certain women. And so that was kind of the thing. And I think people play on that, like their fears. It's like a fear based system where we'll provide you safety. You have those fears. We'll fix it. And that was what Trump ran his whole thing on. That's how Doug Wilson talks and acts, and all these guys, really, is that you can trust me because I'm aggressive. I'm a strong man. I'm an alpha male. I'm going to go make it happen, and we're going to destroy the city together. And so I think there are parts of society, obviously, Trump won and is doing well again. He might even be in jail and could be elected, which is crazy to think about. But so there are a lot of people looking for that, obviously. And so that's what's scary is it's attractive to a lot of people out there with a lot of fears. And I don't think it's just the let's put women down thing. I think it's the whole just being aggressive, being macho, not being compassionate or loving. There's no compassion and love in this at all.
Well, and if we truly, I think your point is well taken. If we truly step back and look at our rhetoric from the church, let's say from pulpits, on social media, those people who are speaking heads, talking heads, who are figureheads for religion and for faith, a large amount of the conversation in the public forum from Christianity and from pulpits and Christianity is about fear, that you are not safe if you vote for this person. You're not safe if you allow this person into your community. You've got the gay agenda, you've got refugees, you've got the other political party, you've got the other like everything is always framed in this. You are unsafe, and so it's this stoking of fear. I think you're right, as you say. In who is out to get you and what is out to get you and what will happen to you and your faith who you love, your church that you love, your Christian friends who you love, if you don't vote for this person, if you don't expel this person, if you don't control this person's behavior. And I was listening to the Republican debate this week, and both sides probably do this, but it was a Republican debate this week that I listened to, and you're right. I was fascinated and disappointed by the amount of things that were simply talking about fear and trying to instill fear in voters to vote for that person, fear in the other candidates, even in the other Republican candidates, fear in what's going on, in people. And it's simply trying to leverage and stoke fear in order to move people to your agenda, to act, to react in a way that is advantageous to you. And it's not politicians, sadly, primarily who do that, but now it's also the church.
Yeah, and the church is
supposed to not be fearful.
Really secretizing.
If you believe what you preach, what do you have to fear?
Yeah, and they feel the need to unify with our cultural politicians and the parties to fix it, what they deem to fix it, rather than
they're in bed together. Politicians and pastors in general, not all pastors, not all politicians, but are in bed together. And I mean, this is, I think, one of the primary issues that people have with evangelicalism and why so many people end up deconstructing, whether you like deconstruction or not. If you want to stop it, get out of bed, with the empire.
Yeah. It's so reading all these guys is they really feel the need that, like, if they don't win power and control of our government and to create these laws that they think are biblical, that's the way to fix and save the world. In reality,
it's just a slap in Jesus's face. I mean,
yeah.
Jesus kept saying, my kingdom is not of this world. Everybody wanted him, even, his disciples wanted him to set up a kingdom, a physical government kingdom on this world. And he refused to do it and essentially was crucified for not doing it. And then all of these Christian nationalist idiots show up and it's like, no, this is what Jesus really wants. WTF? Read your Bible. Sorry. Was that my out loud voice?
Jesus called us to the upside down kingdom, to lay down our lives for others. He was the king that, went and died for his subjects rather than demanding his subjects die for him, right? He called us to love. And that's the other thing too, is when you hear these Christian nationalists out there, they're like, oh, you're one of those progressive who just tells us to love people. Like, isn't that what Jesus called us to do? Like, so we're not supposed to love? Like,
No, but there was that one passage in there where Jesus said, "Take up your sword." I'm like, just keep reading.
yeah, like,
I did not come to bring peace. Jesus said that. Just keep reading.
yeah. He actually took the sword and turned it into a plowshare, buddy. Yeah,
You're not going to want to stop there because it gets better or worse for
yeah.
you. But
It's just, yeah, it's nonsensical, and it's clearly not biblical. And they try to make it seem like those people who are trying to be faithful to the scriptures are like these evil people, progressives leading you astray. And it's like, if you want to call me
fear
progressive,
again, it's fear. It's instilling fear through labeling.
yeah. If you want to call me progressive because I'm trying to show you the way of Jesus, then fine, call me progressive. But like, it's crazy, and people don't see it. They just like, jump into it. I saw a post the other day, a very like popular mega church pastor now talking about how the critical race theory and evaluating racism in our culture was evil and bad, and we shouldn't be doing that, and churches were wrong for doing that. And it's like, well, why would he say that? Well, he would say that because he doesn't want to evaluate the system that has provided him a lot of power and authority, and potentially lose that. So yeah, it's fear of losing that.
I bet I can guess who that pastor was.
You commented on it.
Oh, I did. Oh.
No, you saw it. But
there's some people you can just count on to, no matter what they say, it's going to be bad. Some people would say that about me, and I would probably agree with them. My wife will often say, you're a pastor, and you get paid to use your words, and how could you be so bad at using your words?
Yeah, I make those mistakes too. Sometimes it just feels good, though. Yeah.
But so many people are being wooed
they're being
by
wooed.
these.
And it's like, I guess us speaking about it is good too, because I think sometimes they can sound really smart and like where it makes sense, and especially if you leave out like some of the Doug Wilson stuff. It's okay to rape your wife because she's to submit to you, she's your slave. If you ignore some of that outlandish stuff, some of it people might get down with and get sucked into it, because of a lot of different reasons. And so I think it's important that we address it. Like that, I think that's why this documentary is. I'm hoping it's good. There's a lot of good people in it, but pointing people to something, like showing them like the light a little bit, the mirror, so they can see where they might be projecting some of those ideals that are negative.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who just, they're, no matter what it is, Rob Reiner, Jesus himself could show up with a documentary, and people aren't going to change from it. But I think you're right that the people who are going watch and listen to the people who decry the negativity around Christian nationalism. Watch and listen who are the people who immediately, without even seeing the movie, just the trailer itself, talk smack about it. These are the people who have power. These are the people who have control in the current dynamic. And these are the people who have the most to lose if the church wakes up to the way of Jesus, and the way of love, and the way of living out the fruit of the Spirit. But you're right. Holding up a mirror to these things isn't going to change everybody, but it's going to change the people like you, the people like me, who don't know concretely or assuredly where Jesus is in all this and where God is in all this, but people who they respect and trust have played on their fears. But I have a lot of confidence in the power of the Spirit to open people's fearful eyes and hearts to where truth is. But not everybody's eyes and ears. My point, not everybody's eyes and ears and heart will be open. And so pay attention to the loudest people, the most negative people to these ideas of Christian nationalism. I mean, the people who are the biggest proponents of it, and they're going to be the people who have the most to lose and the people who are most in the power centers currently of negativity and of hate.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't, I think where it's important we like talk about it is a lot of people aren't thinking about it every day. They're not on Twitter hearing the conversations. You know, in their real life, it's not something they think about, but it's something that they could just easily get sucked into because that's the culture around them. And they're not even realizing they're getting sucked into it because their pastor is listening to these things. Their pastor is participating in this stuff. And their church culture is being driven towards that. And so I think, you know, to be vigilant, to be shrewd in your thinking, to actually, I think the average parishioner needs to start thinking through some of these things. It needs to learn about them, and I think that will help change the tide. Right.
I think that's a good point. You know, listen, if on some of the bigger issues you're not certain whether or not your pastor or your influencer or your spiritual leader is right or wrong, Jesus again and again and again pointed to the treatment of others, how you treat your neighbor, and where we began with this was the treatment of women. You know, if your pastor, your influencer, your spiritual leader, people who you listen to or read, are not handling your neighbor well, are looking the other way with how women are treated, are encouraging the bad treatment of women, of minorities, whether it's ethnically, sexually, gender, then you should really take a good hard look at whether or not your pastor, your community, your spiritual influencers are maybe leading you down a very unhealthy path that will end in, you know, ultimately, let's not say where that ends, but obviously immediately it ends in places like January 6th. It ends in places like, you know, sexual abuse of women, of children in the church. It ends in, you know, the ill treatment of our neighbors who Jesus said that we're supposed to love and to care for. So start paying attention to those things, and then I think the theologies and the thinking and the power starts to unravel, and the blinders fall from our eyes.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. Might be a good place to move on to our jacked.
All right, let's do it. Oh, hey, you're not there. Let me add you in here. There. Oh, we're on opposite sides. This feels weird. I'm supposed to be over there. What are you doing, Matt? You're killing me.
You just
have no
my whole screen. I can't tell the difference.
You have no control. Oh, so you have no idea. Yeah. Well, now we're on opposite sides. Okay. I guess that's only fair, though. Yeah. So I my understanding is just from seeing your posts and stuff online that you've been killing it lately in the gym, right?
Oh yeah. I've been going a lot lately. It's been fun. Yeah, getting some PRs, some growing in my fitness. I've also been eating healthier, which
that's the wrong time of year for that.
Yeah, yeah. Those things tend to coincide. When you eat healthier, normally your gym performance improves. So
it's yeah, there's a one-to-one relationship.
Especially
there, sadly,
the older you get, the more you notice that. So yeah.
Yeah, but my favorite stories, you know, I know you guys don't see the behind the scenes communication, but my favorite stories are from Matt. Are the stories where you will tell me, you know, what some young buck or somebody like totally underestimates, you know, your ability and physical prowess in the gym, and just totally gets annihilate. Those are my favorites.
Yeah, I've grown a little beer belly, and so I think people they see the little belly and they're like, I could take him. So yeah, the other day I had a kid come up to me after, and he's like, dude, you're super fit. You just got a belly. He's like, I was trying to beat you, and I just couldn't. You just destroyed me. I don't know what it was. And I was just like, all right,
Old
young
man
buck.
strong.
Yeah, it's dad strength, and I think I told you, I was like, I've gotten to the point in my life where I mentally can go to a place that I couldn't do when I was younger. I just know how my body is, so it's all about knowing your body. But yeah,
Well,
those
yeah,
are
you
those are
you
fun.
you know how far to push your body. You know you're able to pace yourself. So many folks come out, you know, especially in CrossFit type stuff. You know, will come out of the gate just, you know, at 110% and just not have the steam, you know, to get through and just burn themselves out. And you know your body. You've been doing it long enough. You understand, you know, where your sweet spot is in your rhythm. And it's just pretty fun to kick a kid's ass who thinks that they can run circles around you just because they may or may not have abs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's your typical like 25, 26-year-old like jack cut up dude, and yeah, it's funny. I got sucked into it today though. My coach was like talking a little bit of smack to me, and you should really go for 20 of these in a row at the beginning. You know, really try to string a bunch together. And so he got in my head, and I did, and it was a mistake. I was like, I should have just stuck with my plan.
He
I should listen
sabotaged
to
you.
him. He did. He did.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on autopilot right now. You know, the holidays from Thanksgiving into Christmas and all. I feel like I'm just trying to hold on, and if I don't gain more than a couple of pounds, then I feel like it's a success. So I put on a pound or two right after Thanksgiving and kept it on for the week after. And my trainer this past weekend was like, all right, this is the weekend to, you know, this is the week to hit it hard. You know, let's lose a couple of pounds. We'll go into, you know, Christmas being down a few pounds of weight. And, you know, I'll give you a week or two off at Christmas. And I'm just like, there's no way. I'm already looking at the scale for this week, and I'm like 3 or 4 pounds up from where I was last week, because there's a lot of candy bars around, and we're moving, and I have all these excuses because we don't have all the kitchen stuff unpacked, so I can't make chicken and peas, and all I eat every day is just chicken and peas and chicken and peas and chicken and peas. But not this week, man. It's been paydays and those little Kinder bars. I love those little Kinder bars. And I might have had a cinnamon roll or two and a donut. And I never eat that crap. But this week, it's December. It's the holidays.
Yeah.
I'm massing, right?
Bulking. Yeah,
bulking.
bulking
This is bulking season. Yeah, but it's not bulking season for me, and yet somehow or other it is. So I'm going to be in this conundrum tomorrow. Do I be honest with the coach about what I weigh, or do I lie? And hope I can catch up ground next week. Yeah, this is where, you know, integrity. Why do we have to be people of integrity? And do we have to be people of integrity with our fitness and our weight? I don't know. I'm going to say no.